Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Well, hello again. This is Ray Jarrett. I'm with Gary Kendall, and welcome to another episode of Courageous Conversations. Today we have a guest speaker, so you're going to really enjoy it. I'll have Gary introduce him.
Yeah, let me just say before we go there that the reason we do this podcast is to encourage people to have conversations that might feel a little bit awkward. Sometimes it can feel like we're wading into deep water. And we're hoping that when we show you how that it can actually happen, that it'll embolden you to go have some conversations of your own. Mm-hmm. So the word courageous doesn't mean that we're always tackling the most difficult things, although we do go there. Mm-hmm. But it means that this kind of conversation is one that to go in this place, to go in these waters, it probably is going to have to be intentional because our natural way of living is more to avoid the conversations that feel a little bit tricky. So we want you to have them. We hope that we can demonstrate that it can be done in a way that is actually good and helps us to grow in our understanding of each other and become a better person in the end. So it's my privilege to introduce Lester Estelle Sr. today. Lester, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Gary and Ray.
Yeah. So we've been friends for nearly 20 years now.
Absolutely.
And I just love the experiences we've had. Some that were really positive and fun, and some that were challenging.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so glad that we've been able to navigate the different things we've been through. And just to give a little bit of background, but I want you to tell anything I leave out here.
Okay.
So I actually met Lester the first time through his son, Brandon, because Brandon was leading some in his high school. I think it was Olathe South. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, was leading a group that he created out of other students, a worship group. And that's how I first came across him. And then through him, I met you.
Yes.
And met your other son, Lester Jr., and your beautiful wife, Pat, that I dearly love. And so we were going down some parallel paths. I knew you were a follower of Christ. I was leading a church in Olathe. And we came to the place where we needed a worship leader. And I thought, man, what a great opportunity to bring Lester in and borrow from your passion and your the artistry that you bring with the guitar and your voice and your family. You brought family members in to the worship team.
We're a team.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I would have to say at the beginning of that, I didn't really understand all that the door that we were opening up in terms of how we would go on a learning journey together.
Sure.
And you used your background through your work, City of Olathe, Water One. You had such a vast history and resume of being a leader in the marketplace, and you brought a lot of that to Indian Creek. You helped make us better in many ways, not just the musical ways. So thank you so much for joining today. It's really a privilege to have you come.
It's good to be here.
Now, Gary, this is fascinating to me. You talk about courageous.
Yes.
So if I'm not mistaken, this church is somewhere in Olathe or Lenexa,
right?
And my guess, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is they're predominantly white church?
Well, I think it was like Olathe itself was like 95% Caucasian.
Wow. And so
the church reflected that.
Yeah, reflected that. And so somewhere, I hope it wasn't a bad piece of meat that you said, I'm going to bring on a black worship pastor. So just talk us through.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Too much pizza that
Too
night.
much pizza.
Well, I think the intention was good. In my background growing up, I had the privilege of growing up in a church that was racially mixed. And we had really good friends who were black, who were great worship leaders. And so I was probably predisposed to believing this would be a good thing. Mm-hmm. But I also knew that we're image bearers of our Father,
Yeah.
Father God. And he saw color. He intentionally divided languages and culture and spread it all around the world.
Yeah.
And I think we should reflect him. And we need to go out and contend for things that are important to him. And so I'm looking around our church. I see this lily white church. I don't know if we had any people of color. Not many.
Not many.
And I'm thinking we need to be more like heaven, because when we get to heaven, I think whites are going to be an definite minority. We need to be more like heaven.
Yeah.
What can we do to start learning while we're here? And also, how can we impact our culture? It's always been a burden to me that our schools are more racially diverse.
Right.
Or the workplace is more racially diverse than the church, which I think is an indictment on the church. So those are the things I was going after when we went this direction, and I think we made some really good progress, and I had quite a few interesting experiences along the way.
So in the process of that, maybe Gary doesn't even know this, but early years I was a part of a Church of God in Christ, and my family, especially on my wife's side, they were very actively involved in ministry. After I got married, became very actively involved in that predominantly black church and in the city. And early on in that process, I started just having those growing pains that recognized that God wanted something totally different out of our ministry, and He wanted to involve that ministry with people of other ethnicity, and how we do that. And so I remember being at my local Church of God in Christ church there in the Kansas City, Kansas area, but we'd get up early in the morning, Ray, and we'd go to Full Faith Church.
Okay.
And we would have the service there, and that was in the days of Ernie Gruen and some of that group, and they'd have the 8 o'clock service. And I remember being introduced to worship and praise, and
They had a good praise team.
They did. They had an awesome one, and we would take some of these songs back to our congregation, and they were looking at us like, "What are you doing?"
I've never heard this one.
Because we were used to the 2 and the 4, and these were on the 1 and the 3, and it was quite an experience. But that was the humble beginnings of us being understanding that God had called us to something uniquely different from just being a part of the community that we were raised in, but then pulling us out of that to something totally new and fresh and new.
I will just relay another story, but I remember, I grew up in Kansas City, and I initially went to a Church of God in Christ, and then I went to a predominantly white Baptist church for a while because that was associated with the school I was in. But when I became an adult and a musician, I played exclusively at black churches, and so I knew all the songs. And God moved me and my family to California, and we went to a church that had a black pastor, but that ministry was a rainbow. I mean, so it was all Hosanna integrity music. And for the first time in my life, I sat through a whole worship service and I said, I don't know any of these songs. I don't know. I can't even sing along. But so I understand what you were talking about there.
Yeah.
Lester, I'd love to ask you from your side of it. No, I didn't know that story, by the way. That's a great story. So I'm rather innocently naive when I'm making this invitation. Can you share a little bit of what was going on in your mind? Because I'm guessing you knew this might become more of a, there were landmines in the field. Maybe you knew even more than I did. What's going on in your mind when you said yes?
We always knew where it's been something where God guides, He provides.
Right.
And so when we had that philosophy and thought process, we knew the work never was ours.
Yeah.
It was too big to be
That's
ours.
good.
It's going to be His. And so with that, we didn't come in with any mixed we knew what we were signing up for. Let me put it like that.
Yeah.
We knew what we were
Yeah.
signing for. I'll share a story. Again, some of these stories Gary may not even know of, but I remember a friend of mine, Dennis Carnahan and John Folk, were there one
Yes.
evening, and we been recording. We were working on a project. I was playing guitar, and somehow, some way, we had triggered the alarm at Indian Creek Church.
Oh my!
And I remember the police showing up, and they were asking. I said, "No, I'm the worship pastor." And they were looking at the building, and they were looking around, and then they were looking at me, and something didn't fit.
Oh yeah!
And
Here
I
we
knew
go.
that something that didn't fit.
Right.
So they were gracious enough to let us know. And in fact, we ended up calling John Benny, and he ended up vouching for me. And so John Benny has been my friend ever since.
That's right. He's on the Christmas list.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
But I hate it when things like that happen, though.
It's just, again, it's just the part of the journey.
It's the world we live in.
Yeah, it's just the world you live in. And, of course, those were early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember someone coming to me who was a rather prominent person within the church. And this is after maybe a year's time. And, by God's grace, we did grow
Yeah.
in color.
Yep.
And not just with black and white. I mean, we started, I remember at one point on our staff, we had a woman who was Korean. We had a couple people who were Hispanic. We had a couple blacks, a couple whites. So we were starting to we looked a little more like heaven in those days. And this man came to me, and he got really close, like he was going to be quiet and intimate. And he goes, "Do you understand what you're doing?" And I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what, because I could be accused of a lot of things.
Sure.
Like, what am I doing? And he goes, "This is Johnson County." And then I thought, okay, now I know what he's talking about. And he goes, "You don't do this in Johnson County. If you do this, what's like what he said," and he even used our building. He goes, "Look at this beautiful building that isn't paid for." He goes, "Do you understand where you're taking this church?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, I do. I've prayed about this, and I believe it's the best days are ahead of us, and I'm excited about what God is doing." That ended the conversation. But I think he was trying to lean on me with his influence. And, he didn't stay around much longer after that.
Wow.
These kind of things are sad to me, but I think that this is the culture we live in, the world we live in. And if we don't set a different example, how will the world ever know?
Yeah,
Right.
That's very true. I know oftentimes people will say you're a bridge. And if that is the case, you have to know that you're expected to walk from this side to the other side for that bridge to be effective.
Yeah.
And so things that are happening on this side of the bridge may not be happening on this side of the bridge. But when you meet in the middle, you get a chance to have a dialogue and a discussion.
You really do.
You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think that it's sad and our world is deprived when we don't take the best from each culture and let it shine?
Oh,
One of
man.
the things that I love so much, I treasure from the days that we were together, 10 years plus, is the diversity in worship, the way that we experience new, you mentioned rhythms, new sounds, remember, Lester, when we started introducing, we might sing a verse of a song in Spanish. And now that just really threw people off because we didn't have very many Hispanics at the time. But we did that consistently for a time, and then we were able to start a Hispanic campus out of that. And it was the intentionality, again, of saying, we know that there are people from the South moving into Kansas City. They're in our city. And we want to include the fact that they're welcome here. And I think even that small way of saying, "You're welcome here," helped us they were inviting friends, and there was a rapid growth among the Hispanic population until, we finally had the campus. And then some people chose to stay in the integrated worship service versus going to the campus because they didn't want to go just to a service with all the Latinos. And we would have missed out on so much if we didn't have the courage to wade into the deep water.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I remember several times with the band. We had the conversation where we were trying to figure out. I can't play it with the Espanol church because I don't know the words, and being a musician, I say, well, the same C and the same G,
Right.
the same B flat is going to be played.
I remember that.
There, you just hum along and just sing in your own language. Got to give the interpretation. I had something that I said.
You had a lot of stuff.
And we went down there, and we had a great time.
Oh, you
and,
did.
And I will tell you, there were so many great musicians down there that I got a chance to meet. And I wouldn't have got that opportunity just to blend together and just see what all God has for us. Mm-hmm. Totally different if I would just stuck to everything that I'm comfortable with. And I don't know, I think in my world, I've never been one that just got comfortable just sticking with just this. I think God wired us so that we can be different, and we start that conversation, or we can be a part of the discussion that uniquely God can use you any way he desires. Gary, I think it starts with actually the way I play a guitar. You may not know this, Ray, but
I love this story.
I used to sneak my dad's guitar out, and while he was at work, he worked the 3 to 12 shift, and I would sneak it out in the evenings and play his guitar. And I would watch on TV what we were able, not cable, but what we were able to get. And the shows we were able to get at that time had to do with Hee Haw, it had Joe Pass, it had, the Grand Ole Opry, it had all of these kind of people. Well, I was trying to emulate what I thought I saw on TV, and years later I recognized that TV is a mirror image and it's kind of reversed. So I was literally a right-handed person, but playing a guitar hung the wrong way. So I was playing this guitar to try to match what I heard and saw, never having a lesson, but watching the TV and trying to do exactly what I saw them doing. And it wasn't until later when people begin to tell me, well, you're playing left-handed, but you're right-handed, but you're strung upside down. And I begin to understand if God can use a guy like me that's
amazing,
right-handed, but playing left-handed, but the strings are the wrong way, and playing in a dagad, which is an Irish tuning, a Celtic tuning, but I'm black, he can use anybody.
Wow,
he can use anybody.
That is an amazing story. I can't wait to watch you play the guitar now. So.
Well, you won't learn any new chords that way. I can guarantee you that.
Well, I have a question. Now, a lot of our viewers may not know this, and I know you've heard it, Lester. And I don't know if I've even shared this with you, Gary, but down through the years, history, there's always been an unwritten rule or an unwritten pressure on black people who find themselves in all white settings. Mm-hmm. The pressure is that you are now representing us. Don't make us look bad.
Wow.
I even remember a story, and you guys could look this up. It's Martin Luther King got wind that Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, my favorite show, by the way, and she goes, I think I'm going to quit after this season. And he said, oh, no, you can't quit. He goes, do you recognize the impact you're having on society by being in this place that just not many black people can be in? And so I I remember in the early stages of, my career, I was usually always the only black person in IT settings in the, the late 70s, early 80s. And I just wonder if you felt any of that pressure going to be the worship leader at this church.
Absolutely. But I was already experiencing that kind of pressure working for the city of Olathe.
Okay.
Because I joined the city of Olathe in 1979, and in that time period, they didn't have a lot of black managers. They didn't have a lot of black directors and everything. I came in literally as a scrub, as they would say, trying to learn chemistry, trying to understand water treatment, trying to understand all of those, what it took to produce good potable water, and didn't have the background, didn't have the college, didn't have anything other than just a drive to do something different for my family. And out of those years of just putting in a lot of work and going to night school, going to JUCO, doing the different things that needed to happen, I begin to understand you're representing a whole group of people and you don't want to mess up. And you'll hear my kids, they'll tell stories about, oftentimes they're in settings and I'm letting them know you're representing an Estelle. You're representing,
That's
Estelle's mean something, and we have those kind of discussions.
I think they're representing well.
They are still representing. I'm so proud of them and what they're doing. I was just, like I said, this past weekend down at a church in Battle Creek Church down in Tulsa, where my youngest son just became a worship pastor down there.
Following in the footsteps. Good deal.
Here I got a chance to serve with him, a church of about 4,000.
Wow.
Totally mixed, totally integrated, and not having any problem with that,
Man.
and then serving the community. So, and the thing I like about it, Ray, it's the thing that I see, it's not only happening with white and black, but it's happening with multi-generational things. You're seeing this, sometimes diversity is looked at as just white and black, but as Gary said, it's coming like this, full circle.
Right.
And so I think God had a whole plan. When I think about chapter 2 of Acts and all of the things when Peter was sharing his message, he was sharing a message to 17 different dialects of people there. God had something in mind when he put that all thing together. And that is what birthed the church. You say, well, why did the church grow so quickly? You let 17 different groups of people hear the good news of the gospel, something's going to change.
In their own
Something's
native
gonna happen.
language.
That's an awesome perspective.
Yeah.
Man. Gosh, churches, we've always felt like should be the leaders in showing love and acceptance. And sadly, we have a history that in America anyway, that doesn't reflect that. But we hope that it's getting back to that.
Right.
You said in an earlier podcast, Gary, that it's really discouraging as a person of faith, to just see, it seems like that the business world and the nonprofit world and all these other sectors of society are doing better at diversifying than we are. But I'm glad to know. So how did the congregation accept you? Here you are, upside down, first service. How did it go?
I don't know. I don't know how many forms Gary got back that day. I don't know what the
feedback was.
People loved you.
Was that okay?
Is that right?
Oh yeah, people loved you.
Well, I tell you what, I always felt at home. I always felt at home.
That's good news.
And I think part of that is I trusted the leadership. I didn't ever feel that it was a part of being a token or anything like that. I felt like I had a voice at the table, and I had an input. And people of color, when you're in a situation like that, if you can have your voice be heard, then you become a part of that discussion.
Yes.
But if it's just going through the motion, and anybody can spell that out and fill that out, and that comes off really not being non-genuine.
So we were in a program meeting one time, and we were planning Christmas, and our program meetings were pretty. They were a lot of fun. They're intense and fun and wide ranging. Let's say it that way. And we were making our plans for Christmas, and Lester leaned over and he said, "Do you think this is a year we should tell them that Jesus wasn't white?"
that could be a big shock, because all the pictures.
The room just broke up. And I think someone said...
And Gary didn't reprimand me for that.
I think someone said, "Oh, they're not ready for that yet."
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah.
But I think you have to believe that things can get better, and humor always will help. And
It
You know,
does.
it's so unfortunate, Ray. But I also here's the question. Maybe you can answer this question for me. I've not been able to solve it in my mind, so this
Okay.
could be the moment. So we do feel this disparity between the culture that's working to integrate diversity and the church that seems to resist it. At least I feel that. I feel that there's a negative side to that. However, I would also be the first one to say when people sing, they often love to sing in their own language. Like, you know, I've had Hispanics tell me, I can sing your songs, but I don't ever feel closer to God than when I sing in my native language, you know. And I think the same is true for maybe the kind of music you grew up with, or the kind of places where we're with a congregation that nurtures our soul because we've been through a lot together. I don't want to take that away from people and say, oh no, like everybody should go to find a church that's racially mixed. I haven't come to believe that that's true, but if we don't do more of it, we're going to keep getting what we've got.
Yeah.
So I'm a little torn on that. I think we should push ourselves to stretch and grow and learn new things and be with different people and different cultures. But I don't know that every church should, you know, try to go down the path of integrating just for the sake of integration. I felt led to do it, and we took on all of the things that you have to take on. But I don't know that that's for everybody. What do you think?
Well, I've been in charge of the music department before as well. And I learned a really important lesson, and it's twofold. And number one is, and you can look at all the research, the most powerful medium in the world is music. As a matter of fact, I can quiz you on something that you learned when you were in 5th grade, and if you learned it in the form of a song, I bet you still remember it to this day. You know, a lot of us remember the words to My Country 'Tis of Thee, to, you know, I Wish You a Merry Christmas. These are all songs, but if you had to learn the words just from rote memory, you would have forgotten them by now. And the other thing is that the second thing about music is that, yeah, there are people love their style of music, and it moves them in ways that are indescribable. And so my first thing learning about this in a mixed culture was not really so much the styles, because again, the way to do it is by putting a little teaspoon in here and a little teaspoon in there. But mine was learning that I had left out a complete group of people who were still in the audience by omitting hymns. And so the pastor came to me and said, we need to do more hymns. And I was just like, I never thought of that. You know, why would we do that? You know, when we have all this other fantastic, I said, you know, I got guitars and I got horns but man, we sung a hymn one Sunday morning and you people the older crowd was crying. They thanked me, and I got hugs, and I think I got a piece of butterscotch candy from an old lady. So you know, how did you select music at the church?
Well, and that became real easy. You dealt with, and we did a lot more hymns.
We did some.
We started with some things that were foundational.
Although you always made them new at the same time.
Yeah, we had to put a gospel flavor.
There you go.
So I don't know if either of you guys cook, but my wife is probably one of the premier cooks, and she can just make about anything.
Wow.
But when I go in the kitchen, I'm using every spice in the kitchen simply because I don't know enough about this spice not reacting with this spice well.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm going to try something different. And I do that with music. I try something with a different beat, sometimes it's reggae, sometimes it's smooth jazz, sometimes it's a bluesy thing. And we do that with our music. And the arrangements of music. We give it a kick. We do something different. I don't think music that is blasé or vanilla, totally vanilla, or totally chocolate. You gotta get a swirl. You gotta get something mixed up in there so that people will get that message and take it home with them. So yeah, that's how we selected. And of course, at Indian Creek during those days, we had a team around us, and so I think that gave us more of a balance.
Right.
I think it helped us know what we were working with, but yeah, it was always those meetings. They took a lot longer because we couldn't agree on some of the things that we should do.
Right,
and then, but we knew that next week what we should not do ever again. We did figure that out.
Didn't work.
That did not work. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to grow and experiment.
Yeah.
I remember that one of the highest compliments that I ever had, Lester, was while you were leading. Bill Hybels came out, and he was leading this large church in Chicago and traveling all over the world, right?
Yeah.
And I asked him to come out because I knew him personally, and I asked him to come out and do a service for us as we were dedicating our new fundraising campaign to build our new sanctuary. And he was willing to come. He came out in a snowstorm. Do you remember, in the middle of a snowstorm? And the church was full anyway. But that particular night was just kind of a normal night for us. We had black and white, we had Hispanics, we had old and young, and a bunch of other instruments that aren't always on a church stage necessarily. And after the service, he walked back to my office. We were just talking a little bit, and he goes, "Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a more diverse worship team than yours." And I said, "Thank you, I think." And he goes, "No, that was amazing." He goes, That was fantastic. I don't know how you did it, but that was wonderful. And I said, well, I didn't do it. I gave you and the rest of the team the credit for it. But from a person who traveled as much as he did, that was a really big compliment. I do want to wade into something here, and I know we're getting short on time, but I think this needs to be said.
Sure.
When I was young and studying churches and church growth and trying to learn about what helps churches grow and what hinders churches to grow, et cetera, I read a lot of different material. And one of the things I read early on, I probably couldn't disagree with more than I did at the time. But this was the standard teaching that was out there. And it was that things that are homogeneous in nature are more likely to grow faster because people have a lot in common. And so this particular person who was teaching this about church growth was advocating that you try to keep your churches as homogeneous as possible because that'll give them the best chance to grow. When I first heard that, I just took it as fact and believed that, well, this person, it must be true. He's studying it, he's saying it, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But the longer I sat with it, the more uncomfortable I felt from a biblical point of view. Because I feel like that, honestly, if we're the image bearers of God in the world, which I believe that's what he wanted from his people. Yeah. So as a children of God, we become the image of God in our world. We're his image bearers. Then we should see the world as he sees it. And I don't believe that that's the way he sees it. That maybe there's a scientifically proven fact that homogeneous groupings socially grow faster. Okay. I don't believe that that's pleasing to God. I think that what is pleasing to God is that we accept that he made the world diverse and that he loves diversity and that he loves all the different, you said, spices, colors, music. Cultures are so diverse and different and beautiful in their own right. And to deprive each other of that, I think, is really to keep people from experiencing the world the way that God intended it to be created, which I would say transfers to the church. So then when churches have the courage to step out and be more diverse, then they're actually exposing people to the way that God created the world. And whether it actually grows faster or not, is almost irrelevant. Mm-hmm. To me, that healthy things grow. So if a church is healthy, it's going to grow. Jesus said that we should be attached to the vine. If if we abide in him and he abides in us, the same will bring forth much fruit. Our growth comes from being attached to the vine, to being like Christ, to being with Christ. It's irrelevant if we have a homogeneous grouping or not. And so I just really rejected the teaching that I was given early in my career. And now I would say, if you're happy in your Black church and you feel like you're growing there, like grow there and bloom and bear fruit, you know, but also spread out your taste buds a little bit and experience some of the rest of the world. And then let God put you where he wants. Again, stay connected to the vine. He'll guide you where you need to go. He might lead you, like Lester, to a church like Indian Creek, but he might not. And we just let God be God. But let's be open to the way that God would use us as his image bearers to contend for the fact that the world as God created and designed it as the best possible way. When we bring the kingdom of God to earth, earth will become more like heaven. Heaven comes to earth, earth becomes more like heaven. That's what Jesus came to do. That's what we get to do.
Man, that's so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't we let you have the final word here, Lester?
But you do need to tell them where they can find you playing music. Cause,
Oh, yeah.
You have so much to offer. They need to go find you at Homer's or wherever you're playing.
Sure. Right now you can get our latest project. It's on Spotify, Apple Music. It's just released last Wednesday.
Woohoo!
2 new releases. So we're open to have a full blown second part of Seasons album released by the end of the year.
Nice.
But you can reach us on our webpage, Lester Estelle Senior. And it'll have all of our dates and Christmas concerts and all the activities that we're doing. You would think I would be wanting to slow down in this season, but we're getting accelerated for whatever reason in this season.
Awesome.
So thank you for this opportunity to be with you guys this afternoon.
And you should tell what your other son does, because like you would not want Lester Jr. to be disappointed. You only talked about Brandon.
Well, I have three children. I have a daughter that is in Gardner and she teaches school, and I have my youngest son Brandon, who is a worship pastor down in Oklahoma. And then my oldest son, Lester Jr., is playing. I've been on the road with Kelly Clarkson for the last 10 years, and just a fantastic musician. And the producer of my latest, greatest project here.
Yeah, love
Man,
it. Love it.
See, this is the dream that I had for myself as a musician. It's just, I guess, it's one of those things.
There's always hope, Ray.
The's still
time.
There's still
time.
I'm gonna get back down in the basement.
Oh my God!
Get going.
And I just saw a studio across the hall there. So
there you go. Yeah, you're all set up. No excuses.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe after Unite KC, there's a musical career for me. So, Gary, why don't you take us out?
I'd be glad to. So thank you for joining us today on another episode of Courageous Conversations, where we wade into some of the deeper water and just talk about, in a very open way, the things that are happening in our culture. And our hope is that you would do the same, that you would find a friend, get a cup of coffee, and start a conversation. And it doesn't even have to be a person of a different color. Our culture has so many ways of dividing today. We need to cross the divide, build bridges, be a person that will reach out to someone different, and then begin to establish that you actually have more in common than you think you do. Yeah. So you can find these episodes on the Unite KC website. You can find them on Apple, on Spotify, and on YouTube. We hope that you'll subscribe and hit that like button, even share it. And let's spread these conversations, because our world really needs more love, more understanding, and people who are courageous in their conversations.
Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.